Native Americans use many tools for different tasks. These tools are special because they are handmade from nature. There are lots of fishing tools for different animals, like fish, traps, halibut hooks, and nets. Native Americans made many different types of weapons, like the war club made from stone, the wooden staff, the bow and arrow, and spears. Native Americans worked hard, and they made beautiful dishes. They used bark to weave baskets and stone, clay, and wood to make bowls. Many Native American tribes, specifically the Cherokee, make a lot of pottery. Pottery has existed for about 18,000 years. The clay Native Americans use for pottery is made with sand and mud. Pottery is a very important piece of Native American culture. Dolls play an important cultural part for Native Americans. They look very artistic and realistic. Some Native Americans call their dolls Kachina dolls. Kachina means human spirit. Dolls are made from a corn husk, leaves. Some are carved from wood and then painted. Some dolls have animal horns for decoration.
Native Americans planted crops and/or hunted for food. Native Americans were among the first humans to plant vegetables and fruit. Native Americans planted a lot of crops and took good care of them. When Native Americans hunted, they used animal skin to blend in. The ability to hunt, fish, or grow all of their own food is incredible. When animals are used for food, Native Americans use their skin to make a headband. They clip on feathers and add beads for color, fashion, and meaning. Headdress can be long or short. In the back of the headdress, there can sometimes be porcupine quills. Headdresses are a nice piece to wear and are very delighted. Native Americans also made and wore earrings. They are made from beads, small stones, turquoise, which is a really pretty blue rock, and porcupine quills. Lots of Native Americans wore face paint when they went hunting. Battle, war. Native Americans wore moccasins made from animal skin. They then sewed together. Animal skin was commonly used to remember Native Americans today. We should put some of their crafts in museums and maybe recreate some of their hobbies, and that is how Native Americans live.
Native Americans in the 1600s would use lobsters to fertilize their gardens and use them to bait their fishing hooks. They would eat them as well. There were so many lobsters you could gather them by hand on the shore. In the 1700s, the first lobster boat was used to catch and transport lobsters live. In the 1800s, lobster traps were used. There were wooden traps. People who ate lobsters at that time were prisoners. Lobsters now are considered a delicacy. Now we use wire traps and motorboats. We use electronics to help us mark places to go lobstering. Now we have plastic buoys. There are rules like overweight and size. You can only have 800 traps here.
Construction on the J.R.F. Edric Bridge started in 1937 and took over a year to complete. It opened to the public in 1939. The designers were David B. Slightman and Halton B. Robinson. It was built and shipped in pieces from Staten Island to the Isle. Before the bridge, people used to ride ferries. When they go shopping or something, they would ride the ferry across and back. When the bridge was built, there was a fee. But now, 83 years later, there's no fee. It's a beautiful bridge that holds people on the Isle a lot.
It was 1929, a joyful place before we had 1929's disaster. The economy fell apart, disaster has begun, and it was not a fun place for anyone. This, my friends, was the beginning of the Great Depression. Banks closed, and there was no money for anyone. Herbert Hoover was the president, and he was blamed for the Great Depression. There was a new president, Franklin D. Roosevelt. In 1941, Roosevelt made the New Deal. It fixed banks and they reopened. Everything was back to almost normal. COVID-19 and the Great Depression have similarities and differences. Some similarities, they both were an accident. It was depressing and very hard. There was job loss and the economy crashed. Some differences is COVID-19's a virus and COVID-19 is a worldwide problem. The Great Depression was mostly an American problem and the economy fell apart.
Frida Kahlo. Frida Kahlo was born July 6, 1907, and died July 13, 1954. Frida Kahlo's hometown is Mexico City. She died and lived her life in Mexico City. Frida Kahlo lived in a tiny, colorful house on Mexico Street with her husband Diego Rivera and her pets. Frida Kahlo's husband was an artist too. Frida Kahlo wanted to be a doctor so she could help other people, until Frida Kahlo was in a horrible accident that left her unable to walk and had to be in bed all the time. When she was in bed, she would paint her dreams, nightmares, and her life. Frida Kahlo's art was nude and true. She had a saying, "I tried to drown my sorrows, but they learned how to swim." Frida Kahlo is an important artist, and her home in Mexico City has become an art gallery for people to see her house and her work. Jackie Orms was the first black female cartoonist. She was born August 1st, 1911 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She died December 20, 1985. People judged her by her race, but that didn't stop her. She kept on writing and drawing. She started drawing around May 1st, 1937. She wrote about things like racism and the environment. She worked for the Pittsburgh Courier and the Chicago Defender, where her cartoons were published. Jackie Orms was an amazing person because she was brave. Churches on Deer Isle. There are many churches on Deer Isle. I will tell you about 9 of them. The first church built was Community of Christ Church in Stonington. It was built in 1830 and changed its name 3 times. Next came St. Mary's Star of the Sea in Stonington. It was built in 1851. It was close to where my grandfather grew up on Granite Street. After that came Advent Christian Church in Deer Isle. It was built in 1861. They do car hops to help people in need. A car hop is where people come in their cars and park them, and then someone will come and take your order. And when it is done, they will bring it to you. Then came St. Brendan the Navigator in Deer Isle. It was built in the 1870s. The original steeple got destroyed in a storm. Next was the Deer Isle Sunset Congregational Church in Deer Isle. It was built in 1884. The pastor is a woman. Then came Sanders Memorial Congregational Church in Little Deer Isle. It was built in 1897. It is near the road that I live on. After that was United Methodist Church in Stonington. It was built in 1917. They only sing church hymns, which are in a songbook. Other churches sing Christian music you can hear on the radio. Then came the Church of the Nazarene in Stonington. It was built in 1961. My mom went there when she was a kid. The last church to come was Calvary Chapel in Deer Isle. It became a church in 2017. It is a branch off of Calvary Chapel in Bangor. These churches all look different. They all started at different times. They are close to where I live.
Some amazing women have changed the world with science. Who's one of the most special scientists around? Annie Easley. Easley is a famous mathematician, computer programmer, and rocket scientist. She was born on April 23, 1933, in Birmingham, Alabama. Her main accomplishment was that she was the first African American to work at NASA. At the time, it was called NACA, short for the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. Annie graduated from Cleveland State University College, CSU, and Xavier University of Louisiana, XUL. She always loved science, but she never thought that she would get to work at NASA. Annie had never heard of NASA, but when she relocated from Alabama to Virginia, She needed a job. In 1955, while reading an article about NASA, Easley called. After many tests, NASA offered her a job. Amy found lots of people interested in the same hobbies at NASA, and together they created the technology for a high-energy rocket that uses liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen to make a rocket booster to launch into space. At NASA, they called her the human computers, just like the two twin sisters who were called twin human computers. Her career at NASA lasted 34 years. She never actually got to go to space, but her rockets did. Her friends at NASA knew she was the big brain of the group, and so did her family. She got along with almost everyone there. One time, Easley and 5 other scientists got together for a photo for an open house. Once they took the photo, one of the other scientists realized that Easley got cropped out of the photo. It was not surprising that she got cut out, because the editors always crop out anything that looks out of place. Because of her skin color and race, they cut her out. I was disappointed. Other than her big career in science, she loved to ski, play tennis, and volunteer. She also worked part-time as a real estate agent and occasionally tutored. Annie was featured in the movie Hidden Figures. It's about women who worked at NASA. Easley died on June 25, 2011. Annie Easley was an amazing woman, and I hope this story inspired you to just try.
Jackie Robinson was born on January 31st, 1919 in Carroll, Georgia. Jackie was a really good athlete. He played baseball, basketball, football, and track. Jackie went to UCLA. He earned varsity letters in 4 sports. He was the first UCLA athlete to do this. Jackie could no longer afford UCLA. He then served for the Army for 2 years. Then he went to play for the Tennessee Monarchs. It was an all-black baseball team. In 1946, Jackie married Rachel Islam. They had 3 children. Branch Rickey was the president of Brooklyn Dodgers in 1945. He asked Jackie if he would play for him. Jackie would be the first black baseball player on the team to do this. Jackie played very well, and he dealt with racism. It was very hard for him. Jackie played baseball for 10 years. He was more than a great baseball player. He helped end segregation in baseball. After baseball, Jackie worked for social change. He was also a businessman. He died on October 24, 1972.
Basketball was invented by Jim Naismith from Massachusetts in 1891, who was a Canadian-American gym teacher. Football was a sport, but seemed too rough. Jim wanted to change the game. Instead of tackling the man, tackle the ball. He set up peach baskets on each side of the court. The goal was to get the ball up the court by passing and shooting it to the basket. The kids really enjoyed this new game. They called it basketball. At this time, it was a total white game. Blacks could not participate. The rules were really simple when he wrote the original rule book. As time went on, present day, there are 250 rules. 74.2% of NBA teams today are African Americans. Basketball is still most popular in the United States. Earl Lloyd became the first African American to play in the NBA at 21 years old. He broke the color barrier, playing for the Washington Capitals. Earl Lloyd was born April 3rd, 1928. He was born and raised in Virginia. He was a good student and athlete. Earl was drafted to the military after he played for the Syracuse Nationals. In 1955, he won an NBA title. In 1970, he got a degree in physical education and became the first full-time black coach for the Pistons. In 2003, he was introduced into the Basketball Hall of Fame. Earl died February 26, 2015 at 86 years old.
Tatiana McFadden is a professional athlete, and she has spina bifida. She was born in 1989. Her mom, Deborah McFadden, adopted her in 1994 from Russia. She moved to Baltimore, Maryland. She started the athletics in 2004 when she was 15. She races marathons on the track and on the road and she has won 17 medals, 7 gold, she has won a lot of awards.
On September 26, 1981, in Saginaw, Michigan, a star was born, Serena Williams. She became a famous tennis player in 1998. Serena was 14 years old when she started tennis on the Los Angeles Public Courts. Her first hit win was in 1999 at the French Open. Her dad, Richard Williams, was her first coach, and a little while later, she got a professional coach. His name is Patrick Margolou. One of her famous quotes is, "Make sure you're very courteous, be strong, be extremely kind, and above all, be humble." 2015. Serena Williams has been playing tennis for 25 years. She has one daughter named Alexius Olympia Ochanan Jr., and believe it or not, she is still competing to this day. Serena Williams designs most of her fabulous clothes. She is truly amazing.
Maria Tallchief was the first ever Native American professional ballet dancer. She was born January 24th, 1925 in Fairfax, Oklahoma. Maria's nickname was Betty Marie. Her father was Native American and her mother was white. Maria played the piano, she tap danced, and she could Spanish dance. When she was 8, she moved to Los Angeles, California. When Betty Marie was 12 years old, she stopped piano lessons and she kept doing ballet. When Betty Marie finished high school in 1924, she knew that she wanted to keep doing ballet, but for a job. After high school, she got a job in New York City with a Russian ballet company. Maria Tallchief became famous. She loved to dance her heart away, and she loved to teach others. She died April 11, 2013.